Everyone, Callie here again, and today I'm back looking at Palkia Kyurem for another Calliaa Learns to play. So this week, I actually wanted to look at just a little slice of one game that I played recently. I think it's a really great example of just how one turn can really make or break an entire game. But before we do that, I am playing a different version of the deck, so I figured we'll take a look at that and see what some of the changes are. So this version of the deck is actually the version that won third place at the recent Peoria Regionals. Figured, I'd been experimenting a little bit with the version that I had been running. Why not just try out this version and see how it works? And I will say, unsurprisingly, I feel like it runs a little bit better than the version that I was using. So let's take a look at some of the changes here. I might even kind of throw up side by side what the old list was versus this new one, just so you can get a sense. But one big change here is we've got Lumineon. Great way to find a supporter that you need when you need it. This version runs 2 copies of Cross Switcher. That way you can play Cross Switcher one time. An include that I didn't really see the value of initially was the Rotom phone. But after playing with this, makes so much sense. Like whenever you're doing the Orangurus, you're able to put a card on top. You're doing that a lot with the Glaciated Worlds already. Or you can do stuff like Rotom phone and then use a Oranguru to find a card right before you're going to Glaciated Worlds. Lots of cool little combos you can do with that card, so it's a fantastic include. Love it in here. This version only runs 1 Battle VIP pass, does run 1 more Ultra Ball. It's got a Cheryl in here. Not a card I've actually ever had an occasion to play just yet in the games that I've played with this version, but I can see why you might have it in here, just the 1 copy. Also a Roxanne to help you come back. A Lost City is in here. But a big difference that is also really helpful against a lot of the decks you'll run up against is these wash energy. So if you're having problems with decks with Sableyes, which those are all over the place, they're in all kinds of Lost boxes, you've got them in Giratina. Pretty much if you're playing Lost Zone, why not play a Sableye if you can afford to put some Psychic Energy in? This can help you get around that. So if you equip this to one of your water Pokemon, not only is it obviously providing an energy, but it makes it so effects from your opponent's attacks can't damage the Pokemon this is attached to. Literally makes you immune to Sableye on any of the Pokemon that this is equipped to. So, put it on something that's gotten a little bit damaged. Sableye, you can just say, nope, can't pick me off, and you're just perfectly safe from it. Obviously, it doesn't work on all your Pokemon, because not all of our Pokemon are water types, but great for where it works when you need it to work. So that's a brief overlook at the changes to the deck itself. So let's get into this game, and again, let's take a look at how just 1 turn can really make a difference, and ultimately in this case, makes it so I lose the game. All right, so this is a game where we play up against a Giratina deck. Obviously a pretty powerful deck in and of itself, has lots of ways to be able to do tons of damage, knock out your Pokemon. Also can be a pretty fast deck. Typically wants to get to 7 cards in the Lost Zone as fast as it can, so it can then Mirage Gate and then start attacking you for a lot. And at 10, obviously its VSTAR comes online, so can be really hard to deal with. Also has that Sableye to help finish you off in the end, which is ultimately what happens to me, as I get finished off by that Sableye. But we're going to focus in on just these first couple of turns. My opponent is going first, and then I go second. And there's a couple critical mistakes, or really probably one big mistake that I make that I feel like ultimately just completely landslides the game for my opponent, and I just lose from that point on. Things to watch for as my opponent's playing, they obviously want to get as many things as the Lost Zone as they can. I'm pretty sure here they're able to get up to 4 cards in the Lost Zone pretty quick. You can see they get these Comfies down, so that gives them probably 3 very easy things into the Lost Zone already. Scoop Up Net lets them get to a 4th, I believe, in the end. And you can see on my side of the field, I really don't have an amazing hand. I have no draw besides the Crobat, and I don't have a lot of ways to thin down my hand. So I'm really just looking at, hopefully I get a good top deck, and then what can I do to thin out as much as possible so I can draw a couple cards with Crobat and hopefully get into this game. Yeah, again, you see here that my opponent pretty easily gets to 4 cards in their Lost Zone. we're already in a fairly dangerous spot. But there are a couple of things here that we can make note of. For one, our opponent threw away one escape rope, and they've also already used two. So we know 3 of their escape ropes are gone. And what I'm thinking here already is, can I hopefully find my Empoleon? Because once they don't have the escape ropes, it becomes a lot harder for them to get out of a lock that the Empoleon can put them in. So that's immediately where my head is going to. So I'm hoping I can get something from the top deck or from the Crobat. All right, so like I said, I don't have a lot going on. I don't get an amazing top deck. I debate doing the switch, but ultimately decide I don't really have much switching in this deck, so I don't want to waste it here just to thin out more. I'm just going to hope the Crobat gives me something. And I do get a couple Ultra Balls. This actually isn't the worst things that I could have drawn, especially since I have the bucket. This deck obviously wants to get cards into the discard, specifically energy cards into the discard, so that way I can accelerate them back with Melanie. I can use my VSTAR power. Lots of reasons that it's good to have water energies in the discard of this deck. So the bucket obviously gives me those to discard and gives me more options to be able to thin out my hand without throwing away some valuable resources. Kind of have a hand where there's a lot that I don't necessarily want to throw away, so that was a pretty good draw there, especially since I already had the bucket in hand. What I'm kind of thinking here in this moment, I remember, is what I really would like is Greninja, because the bucket allows me to throw away an energy to draw some more cards, gives me more targets with that Ultra Ball. My opponent did me a favor by putting down that training court, so I can get that energy back, potentially then throw it away again. And I also want my Empoleon. So see here that I'll go ahead and bucket. And I do the right thing here by checking what's in my deck. I want to be sure before I go for this play that my Empoleon is there and that my Greninja is there. And I do see that those are there, so that's perfect. I'm like, great, I can go get what I want. I do debate for a second. Do I really want the Empoleon? Do I not? But I ultimately go for this switch. And I would say already that was kind of a mistake in and of itself. I haven't played too many games at this point with this version of the deck, and I'm kind of used to having an air balloon, which makes it a little bit easier to switch my Pokemon around a little bit. But all this version has to switch is the one copy of Switch and then Cross Switcher. So especially with the Kyurem in the active, I don't really have a good way to get this Empoleon in the active without that switch. I probably should have thrown away the Cross Switcher instead. That way I could guarantee that I could get the Empoleon in play. And because I make that mistake and then realize it shortly afterwards, then I'm like, oh crap, well, maybe I don't go for the Empoleon, and I get a little too focused on my Kyurem. So you see here that I draw into this Melanie, and I'm like, all right, well, that will help me draw more cards, good for my Ultra Ball. So you'll see here in a second that I do go ahead and go for the Melanie, equip an energy to my Kyurem. Yeah, but at this point, I'm already kind of thinking that I'm going to commit to the Kyurem. And this is where I again make another mistake, because the RNG gods give me a favor here. They give me a Cross Switcher. I could have corrected the mistake that I made by throwing away the switch and still go get my Empoleon and then cross switch into that Empoleon and then hopefully lock him down. I ultimately don't do that, and I think that's really where I lose the game. I needed to get this Empoleon. So if you were really kind of looking at how you got to play against a Giratina deck, as soon as they get to 7, it's a real uphill battle. My opponent has already gotten 4 things in their loss zone, and with the cards that they've used, 3 escape ropes being down, there is a pretty good chance that I can lock them down with this Empoleon and hopefully start to find some cards that can get me out of the situation, because I really still don't have a ton going on with the hand that I've got here. You'll see what I do here, but what I probably should have done instead was use that Ultra Ball, discard probably the energy and the choice belt, go get my Empoleon, throw it out, cross switch into that, probably bring up one of the Comfies. I don't want to give him the opportunity with the Giratina to get that Abyss Seeker off easier. Want to make him potentially waste resources to be able to get that going. So maybe switch into one of the Comfies he's got and hopefully lock him down for a little while. But again, what you'll see me do here instead is kind of ignore that entirely. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, let me just go for my Kyurem, try to power that up, and maybe set up for a knockout next turn against this Giratina. And I'm actually going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit because I want you to start seeing what winds up happening next. Because it is possible that even if I had played the Empoleon that I would have wound up losing this game anyway. But having that fourth Empoleon in play would have really made it a lot more difficult for him to get off what he gets off. So you see he plays the Colress. That gets him up to 5. He's able to easily flower selecting up to 7. Easily able to get that Mirage Gate off. And then just take the knockout on this Kyurem very easily. I don't really have a follow-up after that. I can evolve into my Palkia VSTAR and power that up. But with the bench, how it winds up being, there is no way for me to knock out this Giratina, and the game is just over at that point. But if I had had the Empoleon in play, what it would have forced him to have to do is, one, either have the other escape rope, which was unlikely. Obviously he could have had it, and if he had it, whatever. Cards were in his favor. But with the Empoleon in play, and if he didn't have the escape rope, he would have had a boss to be able to get out of that lock so he could keep flower selecting. But even if he did boss there, that would mean no Colress. No Colress means 2 less cards in the lost zone, 5 less cards total that he would have had to see. He would have had to have been able to flower select 3 more times, found the evolution, found the Mirage Gate, and still be able to switch into his Giratina. Again, not impossible with the Giratina deck, but at least would have made it harder for him, would have really forced him to have gotten lucky with all of those cards. But again, the Colress let him see 5 more cards, easily get 2 more in the Lost Zone, and I pretty much just blew the whole game by not going for that Empoleon. It was really, really critical for me to have gotten it. The game tried to give it to me, and I just did not take it. So like you see there, he takes out my Kyurem. I'll probably skip ahead a little bit and show you, there's no way with, even if I fill up my bench entirely, since he didn't fill up his, even with a choice belt, I still can't knock it out. So jumping ahead here, you can see I tried my best to equip things, couldn't find a way to switch around enough, and all I was able to do was get to 270. So he easily knocks me out, and it's pretty much done from there. I can't really come back anymore. He's got the Sableye. He sets up in a way where there's no way for me to stop it, and I just lose. All because I didn't play the Empoleon. And again, yes, I could have potentially lost even if I played it, but it gave me the best chance of winning in this situation, or at least making the game go on a little bit longer. You really have to keep in mind how fast these decks can go, and looking at that Lost Zone, making sure that you're accounting for how many cards they're getting there, and then how many cards they're likely going to be able to add to it on the next turn, so that you can be thinking about, well, are they going to be able to Mirage Gate? Are they going to be able to use VSTAR? How fast are they going to get to Sableye? And I just didn't do that. I left myself in a situation where I gave him the opportunity to be able to get there, and if he could, then he could easily knock me out, and then I just wouldn't have any way to follow up. And that's what happened. That's pretty much it for this video. I know in this one, I didn't even wind up showing a whole game, but I thought it was kind of important to kind of focus on, again, just how important sometimes those little decisions in the one turn can be. This wasn't a game where I made a ton of mistakes over the course of a bunch of turns. It was really an example of just how I needed to play that first turn in a certain way. I got the resources to be able to do it, but I ultimately didn't capitalize on it, and it really did cost me the game. I just had no way to be able to come back, and I pretty much gave my opponent plenty of opportunities to be able to knock me out. But before we go, I did kind of want to show an update on how well I'm doing with the deck. So I've played 26 games total now with various versions of this deck, most of them with that version 2 that I played in the last couple of videos, but 9 or so with this new version that I showed in the video today. And things are going pretty well. I do think I'm making lots of improvements. Even though obviously I showed in this video where I lost, I do feel like I'm getting a lot better. The more I'm playing with this deck, the more I'm kind of seeing different things that I can do, and just how fast the deck can go and the various ways that it can play in certain matchups. You can see there I do have a 73% win rate, So I'm doing pretty well with the deck overall. I think with the 9 games I've played, I've won with this new version. I've won, I think, 7 out of those 9. So doing very well with this new version. I definitely would say that this version's a lot better than the old one. But if you are kind of interested, you can kind of see some of the matchups I've been playing here. You'll also see I'm doing a lot of going second. I'm starting to really feel like this deck does better going second. A lot of times you need those support cards to really help you get going early on. And also, since we only run 1 copy of Battle VIP Pass, Irida is obviously a great way to go find that. So you can only use that going second. So kind of finding that that's pretty helpful in particular. You can especially see with the version 3, pretty much exclusively gone second. So yeah, I'm definitely liking going second a little bit more with this deck. Anyway, that said, that's going to, again, do it for this video. So if you liked it, go ahead and give it a like. Be sure to subscribe as well, and I'll see you in the next one.